Okay, so as an investor, you're looking at Apple, you're looking at AI, and the big question keeps coming up, right? Is Apple falling behind? And, well, what does that actually mean for the stock?
Yeah, exactly. And look, we're not here to give you a simple yes or no answer,
No, definitely not.
but we want to really dig into this together. Our goal here is to be skeptical, but also fair.
Right.
We're going to look hard at some critiques, especially from Ben Thompson's latest analysis on Apple's AI moves.
But we also need to balance that, yeah. For your investment thinking, we need the other side.
Exactly. So we'll pull in the more positive stuff, the strategic plans from that AP Lee Crossroads report, too.
So we've got Thompson, we've got this Crossroads report, and your fundamental questions as an investor. Let's try and pull out the really key insights.
And what strikes you right away is this tension. You know, you've got this smart skepticism about where Apple stands with AI. But then you also have these reports talking about huge investments, major strategic plays in AI.
That's the conflict we need to explore, really, to help you figure out how you see it.
Right. So let's just tackle that first big concern head on.
Yeah, is Apple actually out of the AI race? Because you hear that sentiment.
You do hear it. But this APLE Crossroads document, it makes a pretty strong case against that idea. I mean, it talks about Apple planning to invest over $500 billion
Wow.
in the U.S. over the next, 4 years? And a big chunk of that is specifically for AI, the silicon they need, the infrastructure.
That scale, that kind of money, that suggests they're serious, not just reacting.
It suggests they might be trying to, own the whole stack for AI on their devices, which is different from competitors relying more on cloud providers,
A big bet, though. Vertical integration like
Oh, yeah. It's potentially a huge advantage if they pull it off performance, security, but it costs more upfront, definitely higher risk.
$500 billion is? Yeah, that's serious. And the report mentions actual buildings, right? Like infrastructure.
It does. They mentioned this new 250,000 square foot facility in Houston, supposed to open in 2026.
And that's not for iPhones.
No, specifically for making the servers for Apple Intelligence. And they're expanding data centers, too. North Carolina, Iowa.
Yeah.
You see these physical moves happen.
It suggests a real, long-term plan.
Yeah, a tangible commitment.
And it's not just buildings, it's people, too. Hiring.
Oh, yeah, big time. Around 20,000 new hires planned in the U.S., and the report says most of those will be in AI roles, research, engineering, software, silicon.
That kind of hiring push really underlines a major strategic shift, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
So it sounds like Apple's story, their narrative, is that they've been in AI for ages, and this generative AI stuff is just the next big opportunity.
That's the line from Tim Cook from the company, yeah. They say AI and machine learning have been part of their products for years.
Right.
And now generative AI is like a key moment to boost the whole user experience.
Okay, but then you read Ben Thompson, and he paints a slightly different picture. He points out that Apple kind of admitted they didn't deliver on some AI promises from last year's WWDC.
That's a really key skeptical point from him, yeah. The gap between the hype, maybe, and what actually shipped. Though, he does acknowledge they did ship the ChatGPT integration, so you have access to those models on the iPhone.
Right, right. And Thompson uses that interesting comparison to Microsoft and the internet.
Yeah, suggesting Apple might be, a bit late to this AI wave, maybe.
But not necessarily doomed because of it.
Exactly. His point about the timing is insightful. Gates's internet memo, that came a few years after the web really started taking off with Mosaic and stuff.
Okay.
But Microsoft pivoted, right? It became huge in the internet era. Thompson's saying maybe Apple's AI situation could play out similarly.
Okay, so let's unpack this Apple Intelligence they announced. A big part of it seems to be this focus on privacy, yeah.
Totally. Apple Intelligence is their umbrella term for all these new AI features. And yeah, the core idea is doing as much as possible on the device, protecting user privacy.
So what does that actually mean for users? What features are we talking about?
Well, things like a smarter Siri, more conversational, understands context better, system-wide writing, help, proofreading summaries, image playground for making AI images, better notification handling, and some advanced photo editing like that cleanup tool.
And a lot of that happens right on your phone, not in the cloud.
That's the goal for many tasks, yeah.
Yeah.
They're using language model, about 3 billion parameters apparently, that runs locally.
Okay, but not everything can run locally, presumably.
Right. For the more complex stuff, they have this thing called private cloud compute.
Which sounds like cloud, but they're saying it's different.
They're really stressing the private part. Using secure enclaves crypto techniques. The idea is your data isn't stored persistently, it's anonymized.
And they're opening the code for inspection? That seems significant.
It is, technically. It adds a layer of transparency, lets people audit their privacy claims. They say only essential data goes there, it's never stored, and security folks can review the code.
They're really hammering this privacy point. That Crossroads report quotes Cook and Federighi saying privacy is fundamental.
Yeah, it seems like more than just marketing. It feels like a core principle driving their engineering choices. They've clearly invested a lot in the tech to back up those claims.
But then Thompson comes back with the question, is this intense focus on privacy actually holding them back compared to competitors who just gobble up data to train models?
And that's the critical trade-off, isn't it? Thompson calls it their absolutist and paternalistic approach to privacy. And he asks, could they have built better AI, maybe a bigger cloud service, if they were less strict about data? Could performance be better?
He sort of implies this hybrid model, on-device plus private cloud, might be a compromise forced by their privacy stance.
Pretty much. He's asking if this principled stand on privacy, which definitely appeals to many users, might ultimately put them at a disadvantage as AI gets more powerful and data hungry.
Okay, another thing Apple always talks about is their silicon. The M4 chip seems pretty central to making this on-device AI stuff work.
Absolutely crucial. The M4, especially the Pro and Max versions, looks like a real step up for on-device AI. Faster neural engine, more memory bandwidth.
Stuff you need to run complex models efficiently right there.
Exactly.
So that vertical integration, designing the chip and the software together, that's their big advantage for this privacy-first AI approach.
That's the strategic bet, yeah. Co-designing everything. They think they can get performance and efficiency others can't, especially while keeping things private.
But Thompson circles back to the platform itself. He argues the iPhone isn't really open when it comes to the main assistant. You're stuck with Siri.
Right, that's a core part of his critique. He says, yeah, great app store, lots of apps, but the core intelligent assistant, that's locked down. He contrasts it with the idea of letting users choose their default AI. Like maybe you want ChatGPT as your main assistant, or Gemini, or something else.
His point is, if you could choose, maybe Siri's weaknesses wouldn't matter as much. You just pick a better AI.
Precisely. He thinks that kind of openness would make the iPhone more attractive as an AI device.
And he compares it to Microsoft messing up mobile.
Yeah, saying that they tried to force the PC model onto phones instead of embracing multiple platforms. He wonders if Apple's doing something similar by keeping such tight control on the core AI interface.
Okay, let's switch gears to the money side. That Google search deal. Roughly $20 billion a year. That's huge.
Oh, it's massive. That payment from Google to be the default search on Apple devices, it's a really significant chunk of Apple's profit.
What were the numbers? Like 15% of operating income?
Something like that, yeah. And it may be 21% of their services revenue. It's substantial.
And that's the money potentially at risk because of the DOJ antitrust case against Google, right? Eddie Q apparently admitted it keeps him up at night.
That's the main threat, yeah. The trial is looking right at those default search deals. So Apple's in a tough spot making a lot of money from it, but it could disappear.
So what are they doing about it? How do they plan for losing potentially $20 billion?
Well, the report says it's kind of a two-track strategy. First, obviously defend the Google deal in court.
Okay.
But second, explore alternatives. They're reportedly talking to others, OpenAI, Perplexity, Anthropic, about potentially integrating their AI search into Safari or elsewhere.
And people have speculated about Apple building their own search engine or maybe charging users directly for some AI features?
Those are definitely possibilities they must be looking at. I mean, with, 1.5 billion active devices, even a small fee per user adds up fast.
Yeah.
There's a huge direct monetization potential there.
And there was that interesting tidbit about Google search queries from Safari actually dropping for the first time recently because people are using AI search tools.
Yeah, that was reportedly mentioned by Eddie Q himself.
Yeah.
It shows these AI search alternatives are starting to bite into traditional search.
Which links back to Thompson's point about platform control.
Exactly. Right now, Apple controls the gateway to Google search. But if search itself changes towards AI models, Apple needs a new strategy, or they risk getting bypassed.
Okay, let's talk user experience. With iOS 18, we're getting Apple Intelligence. How is this supposed to feel for the average iPhone user?
Well, like we said, the idea is to weave AI into everything. The better Siri, the writing tools, image creation, smarter notifications, all done with that privacy focus, lots of on-device processing.
But wasn't there that survey, Cell, I think, showing most people, iPhone and Samsung users, don't think current AI features are that useful?
Yeah, that survey did indicate that. A lot of users felt current AI didn't add much value, and most weren't willing to pay extra for AI subscriptions.
That suggests it's still early days for AI really wowing people on phones.
It does. The industry hasn't quite cracked the code on truly essential mobile AI features yet, it seems.
But interestingly, that same survey said almost half of iPhone users think AI is important for their next phone purchase, more than Samsung users.
Yeah, that's a bit of a contradiction, isn't it?
It is.
People aren't blown away now, but they expect AI to matter more later. Which loops back to your investor concern. Could the iPhone experience get worse if Apple's AI doesn't deliver?
Right. Apple obviously wants to use AI to make the iPhone better, leveraging privacy, security, ease of use.
That's the goal. But Thomson's old argument from back in 2015 still feels relevant, doesn't it? That the intense privacy focus might eventually hurt the product quality as AI gets more important.
Yeah, his worry was that the on-device plus private cloud approach, while good for privacy, might just lead to weaker AI models, worse performance compared to cloud-first competitors.
Exactly. And the fact that consumers aren't super excited about current AI features just highlights the challenge Apple has. Make their private AI genuinely useful and compelling.
Okay, so let's hit the investor bottom line. Stock valuation, Apple's huge, over $3 trillion market cap. Are these risks we're discussing baked into the price?
That's always the trillion-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Financially, they're still incredibly profitable, great margins.
But revenue growth has slowed down a bit.
Yeah, revenue growth has decelerated, some liquidity metrics shifted, things to watch. And with a PE ratio in the low 30s on a 3.15-ish trillion market cap, it's definitely priced for strong performance.
And the analysts, kind of all over the place.
Pretty much. Consensus is like a moderate buy, but the price targets are super wide. $141 on the low end, up to maybe $308. That range tells you there's a lot of uncertainty.
So the bull case is basically AI drives upgrades, services keep growing, the ecosystem stays strong.
Right. And the bear case is, well, everything we've been talking about. AI response looks weak, they lose the Google money, regulatory hits, valuation's just too high already.
So the big risks hitting the valuation are perceived AI lag, the Google revenue threat, and how AI impacts the user experience.
That sums it up pretty well. And this brings us back to Thomson's Intel analogy again.
Right. Intel missed mobile, focusing on the wrong thing, performance, not efficiency, didn't use their manufacturing strength as a foundry, fell behind TSMC.
Exactly. And Thomson draws the potential parallel. Could Apple miss AI because of the privacy focus? Could they fail to leverage the iPhone platform for AI models? Could they fall behind Android or whatever comes next, leading to a worse iPhone experience?
So the question about whether Apple is overvalued really just boils down to, can they actually pull off this AI strategy and manage the revenue shifts? It's an execution bet.
It really is. The market's trying to figure out the odds of them executing successfully through this transition.
And finally, Thomson also brings up the Cook question, right? About Tim Cook's consistency, iOS control, privacy, China dependency.
Yeah, he points out Cook has been very consistent on those things, and Thomson acknowledges those decisions were often smart, even necessary for Apple's past success.
Yeah.
But looking long-term, like towards 2035, Thomson questions if those same strategies will work going forward, especially with AI changing everything.
So what does Thomson suggest Apple should do differently?
He talks about an AI platform pivot. Let developers build with AI on Apple's stuff. Don't just offer Apple's own AI. He suggests a more pragmatic approach to privacy, focusing on trust, not maybe absolutism.
Okay.
And he pushes for faster diversification away from China manufacturing.
So Thomson's point is basically, times change, strategies need to change too. What worked before might not work now, especially with something as big as AI.
That's the core of it.
Yeah.
Could the very things that made Apple so successful actually hold them back in this new era? It's a provocative question.
So for you listening, we didn't set out to give you a simple buy or sell call on Apple.
No?
The goal was really to give you a framework, a way to think through all these different pieces, the challenges, the opportunities Apple faces with AI, and what it might mean for you as an investor.
We've looked at those key tensions, right? The promise of Apple Intelligence versus the doubts about its limits, the risk of losing that huge Google revenue versus finding new AI-driven money.
And how the iPhone experience itself might change compared to, say, Android, as AI gets deeper integrated. Yeah.
So maybe a final thought to leave you with. building on Thomson's long view and thinking about those lessons from Microsoft, from Intel, and given the big shifts Apple is trying to make under Cook, what single factor do you think will be the most critical for Apple's success over the next 10 years in this AI era?
It's a good question to ponder. Something for you to think about as you weigh your own investment decisions.